You're listening to The Flickcast, a podcast about stuff nerds love. I am Chris Ulrich, and joining me, of course, is Supervisor 194, codename Joe Dilworth. Hello, Joe.
You're not supposed to use that name. Nobody's supposed to know. Shh.
That's right. I'm sorry. That will make sense if you've been watching Star Trek Picard, or if you watched OG Star Trek, or or we'll make it make sense for you right now, or in a minute when we talk about the new episode of Picard on this episode of the podcast, and also the brand new episode of Moon Knight, and maybe some other stuff too. But yeah, it's been a good week for TV, and not so much for movies, I guess, but for TV. And I'm not going to talk about anything else that's going on in the world. But we haven't gotten together, Joe, you and I, since the incident. The incident, and so we won't mention it. I don't know. I don't really have a hot take on that. So
I don't want to mention that incident. The only movie-related thing I want to mention, and really briefly, is Mad Love for Bruce Willis. So
yeah, definitely, yeah, good. I mean, I hate to say, what's the word? I'm not proud of him, but I'm impressed that he would come out and talk about this kind of thing and release it, because people could be dicks about that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
But he's getting a lot of support, it seems like, and everything. So yeah, definitely. Thank you, Bruce, for all the great movies and everything. And I hope you're going to make a recovery on this thing. But it's got to be tough, and and it does explain a lot.
It does.
So.
That's the weird thing. And some other folks have kind of come forth and have said, now we kind of understand some things, and we feel
he's trying to make so many movies.
Yeah. Because I had noticed that I'm like, there's, it's like everyone else in Hollywood is not doing anything during COVID except for Bruce Willis, apparently, because there's like 18 movies coming out with him in it. It's like, wow, that guy's a power horse. But it all makes sense now. And,
it does.
Again, like you said, I hope it is, from what I understand, depending on the cause of it, it is something that you can recover from and
good.
And regain cognitive abilities, at least mostly or all the way. Again, like I said, I'm not going to play internet doctor. Just the limited things I've read about it. It again depends on what the causes were. So I hope that he has the one that, or the several that are. That he can rehabilitate from, even if he doesn't come back to acting. That's not the important part. Just, I hope.
No, you still want to have quality of life. You don't necessarily want to. I mean, I'm sure as an actor, he would love to, come back and act. Maybe he wouldn't. I don't know. Maybe he got tired of it. But yeah. So best to Bruce for sure. And I will still watch Die Hard every Christmas, and I will think of him. So speedy recovery, or if possible.
But we don't need to talk about that other bullshit incident. So anyway.
No, we don't. So all right. Well, then let's move on. And I mean, we don't have to talk about it because I feel like everyone else has talked to death already. So that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't really have anything new to bring to the table. So
I don't
let's go forward with Star Trek and with Moon Knight. Which one do you think you want to jump into first? Because I'm excited about both. So.
I am too. Let's go ahead and talk about Picard. Because I feel like we're going to spend some time on Moon Knight. Maybe we'll spend some time on Picard too. But
if we're going to start with Picard, then I would like to publicly give you props for all of your predictions from last week and your theories, which turned out to be absolutely true. So congratulations. I'm being much smarter than I am, apparently. So
yeah,
good for you.
And I'll say mine aren't, at least the Gary 7 connection isn't wholly from my brain. There were people that were like, that seems, where have we heard supervisor before on Star Trek? And it was like, oh, wait a second. But I'll say this. It immediately leapt to mind for me when I saw the method of transportation, even before this episode being in the safe, because I'm like, where have we seen... It was just like one of those things that gnaws at the back of your head. It's like, this all just seems like familiar.
It does.
And somebody mentioned Gary 7 online. I'm like, well, of course. And so, yeah. I meant to go and rewatch that episode of the original series, Assignment Earth, first.
Yeah, I did. I meant to too. I've seen it a bunch, so I can remember it.
What's kind of cool?
I remember it because it's got the amazing Terry Garr.
Oh yeah, there's a couple things I want to point out about that one. Even though it's been a while since I watched it, I like the fact that Terry Garr, even though she was introduced as the secretary to the other two supervisors that had disappeared, that Gary 7 was there to investigate. They in one of the rare instances of not going overly sexist in the original series, they actually made her. She figured out Gary Seven was like an alien or something, and she figured things out and was instrumental in helping with the story. So I thought that was kind of cool. Kudos to that. And the other kind of trivia part to that is that episode was originally, it was conceived as a kind of a backdoor pilot for a show that would have continued the adventures of Gary Seven and Terry Garr's character and Isis the cat.
Isis the cat.
Yes, it changed considerably since once it went into production, and they realized, it's probably not going to end up being another show. But I think that would have been cool as a nice spin-off to Star Trek, because it would have been different, something new and
well,
unique.
even Kirk and Spock are like, we can't reveal everything we know, Mr. Seven, because they knew, they have some interesting things in store for them. They're going to bone. That's what he's trying to say.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Kirk is smirking, like he's like the Cheshire Cat almost. He's like, well, that'd be some interesting. If he had a mustache, he'd be twirling it. There's going to be some interesting things going on.
Yes,
but it never happened. Yeah, that was a good. Well, I think it would have happened. Maybe, I don't know if what the circumstances were, but Terry Garr kind of blew up right after that. So it's like maybe they just couldn't get her.
Yeah,
she became like a big time film actress. But I always liked that episode. I think some of the episodes where the original series goes back to, back in time, were sort of convoluted. I'm sure that was largely budgetary too back in the day. Like, we've already got the Paramount. We've already got the Paramount backlot, so let's use that. But yeah, it was. If I remember correctly, they pick up. They get dragged along by Gary Seven's teleporter thing from his other people. Like he's coming into the planet.
Yes.
So the Enterprise gets intercepted by that, and that's why they have to investigate.
Yes.
But that was a good show. And this thing was like, Laris is basically. I think you're right though. I think it's going to turn out that Laris is Isis, because Isis was a woman at one point, right? And the end of
there's a brief thing where she showed, I think it was Spock, what she actually looked like.
She showed Terry Garr's character.
That's right. That's what it was. Yeah, and she was a woman, like for an eye blink, and then back to a cat who seemed to be
she was
smarter.
A sex kitten.
Yes, I will say the other interesting thing about, and I won't dwell on it too much longer, but the original series episode. It's the only episode of that I know of, the only instance in time travel in Star Trek where it made it seem like routine. They were on assignment from the Federation to go back in time to this particular part and observe what was going on at NASA. Like it was like a routine thing. Like instead of going to a planet, we're going to send you back to 1968 this time. After that and before that, it was all like accidental. And time travel or needed as in Picard needed like really precise calculations and all. It was really funny that it was just like, this is just a regular mission.
Right. Yeah. The even in Kirk's Stargate, the captain's log, it's like we've used the light speed breakaway factor, or the Enterprise has moved back in time.
Right.
Right. Remember they intercept the transporter beam from like thousands of light years away, and Kirk's like, no one has transporters back here, and Scotty's like, whoa, and then they beam Gary Seven aboard by mistake.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And then they're like, what the hell? And so everything goes to shit after that. But
anyway, I thought that was funny that it was like, it's no big, but then after that, it's like, wow, we travel in time. That no one's ever done that in this way. This is crazy,
Well, but the funny thing is they talk about that even in like Voyage Home, because Spock's like, well, just start your calculation for time travel. It's like,
right.
Okay, Spock's like, yeah. And even in Picard, they're like, well, they had Spock. We don't have Spock. We have a Borg queen.
Right.
Although, I don't know, Girardi seems pretty smart. I bet
she could figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, but they needed a Borg queen for later. But anyway, what I should have said also, of course, was spoilers for Star Trek. But we don't have to say spoilers for Assignment Earth, because that was an episode that aired in 1970?
Around
69,
68 when it took place. So
I don't know if that was I can't remember if that was the first season finale or the second season finale, but I remember it being a season finale, I think, of Star Trek, of the original series. Maybe it was 68 or 69. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is that even today, it's a great callback, and I love the fact that they're tying that stuff together, and again, paying homage or respects to the original series, and even in this episode, of course, Picard's like, oh, Kirk said something about Gary Seven. Let's hit everybody over the head in case you don't really know.
Right. We're going to bring it all home.
Picard's got a good memory for things that happened thousands of years, 100 years ago, or whatever.
He's just got. He's obviously done. He did his research and did his reading in the academy and retained all that. So good on him.
I would imagine. I imagine that if you become captain of the Enterprise, you probably studied all the logs of all previous captains of the Enterprise, right? So that makes sense. Yeah.
I bet there's like a whole course and like semester on Kirk's antics at the academy.
You think it's one semester? Maybe.
Maybe it's a whole like this year. We're gonna talk about what not to do.
in Star Trek canon, apparently, I don't know where I read this, but it might have been in the novelization of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, if I remember correctly, that Kirk's Enterprise was the first ship to ever complete its 5-year mission. Like he was the first captain ever to bring his ship back after 5 years.
Oh, interesting.
And complete that whole thing. That's what I mean. I don't know if that's true, but that's also the same book where they talk about how Spock and Kirk might have had a romantic relationship. So I'm not really sure if that's true.
Yeah, that was that one. If I know that they say Gene Roddenberry wrote it, but I think he like had help with like Alan Dean Foster or something. Maybe I'm misremembering a different book, but
I think it was Alan Dean Foster who helped write it. But I mean that's in like one of the footnotes I was talking about, and that's also where I learned that James T. Kirk T is for Tiberius. I had never known that before, but that was when I first found out about it. But that was 1980, so who knows. I was like, Tiberius, what is that? And I had to look it up, and there was no internet back then, so I had to find the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Exactly. I had to go find go to the library, get a dictionary.
Go to the library, and find a librarian. It's just like, I don't know, what is that now? Anyway, sorry, I digress a little. It's just, I love the callbacks. I love this episode was great, and Picard is doing a lot, and I love what happened. They have their like spy mission thing. He's got a plan, and it seems to be working until twist.
Yes.
Twist.
Girardi.
Yeah.
That was that's kind of interesting because the way they played it, it's like, oh, look, Girardi's standing up for herself, and she shot the Borg Queen, and it's like, well, did she? Yeah, she did, but it didn't quite go to plan because now she's infected by the Borg Queen.
Obviously, the Borg Queen is dead, but she's her nano machines are inside of Girardi. So, but she didn't turn to like super into Borg, right? She kind of, I don't know. It's an interesting sort of hybrid kind
of a Cylon thing going on there.
A little bit. Well, yeah, a little bit, yeah. But it's like. But she doesn't show any outward signs of being Borg, though, which I thought was cool, interesting. So why? Because usually any other time we've ever seen a Borg take over another person, it's always like, they turn into Borg, right? They have the whatever implants, or they have, pretty much, even Locutus got a new whatever, but it's like maybe she doesn't have the facilities for that or whatever. But it's just, so if that's the case, then maybe more people. I was surprised that cop actually was not a Borg too. Why was she just holding him hostage?
Is he? Who knows?
Or is he? Well, maybe. I mean, I would think that she wouldn't miss an opportunity to sort of control people, right? The resistance is futile, right? It's like assimilation or death. So why isn't she assimilating these people? I understand.
That's why I wonder if there's something more going on with him. Not only is he a familiar face that he's been in other things, but I mean, who attended him after he was freed from the Borg Queen? Girardi. So maybe he's like incubating and he's the first, because I think it's obvious that the Borg Queen is like, yeah, I don't care about time. I just want a collective back. And hey, look, there's 6 billion, 7 billion people here that would be a fine addition to a new Borg collective. So I'm going to do it. So I think that's kind of her plan.
I agree. But then why is she going along with, why is she just doing that with Girardi? Why is she trying to, what is her end game, I guess, is the question. Why is she going along with the plan? Why not just assimilate everybody?
Well, yeah, and maybe she's being crafty about it because it's like, well, if I start assimilating people in an obvious fashion, then there's a chance that, these folks are plucky. They've stopped me before, especially Picard. So maybe I need to be a little bit stealthy now. I don't know.
Well, this can't be the same Borg Queen from the movie, from First Contact or whatever.
No, probably not. But I mean, I think she's aware of Locutus. She knows that he's Locutus. So it's like,
well, they all are.
He's someone that has successfully beat the Borg before. I need to be a little careful this time, maybe. Well,
that's my question, actually. If we're talking about the Borg Queen, because if I remember the movie correctly, she dies.
I thought though on Voyager they talked about, because there was a different actress that played the Borg Queen on Voyager, and I think they talked about that. Kind of, they have different, same vintage, different casing. I don't know, but that it's like the same kind of overall consciousness. It's just inhabits different bodies. I don't know. Maybe I'm misremembering, but it seemed like that was the explanation they had in Voyager for why the Queen looked different.
So. Well, it says. I mean, I think they're not supposed to be the same person. I think they're supposed to be 3 different ones because Alice Krieg was the first one. I thought that Picard killed her, or at least her. Didn't he like sever her, like pull her neck apart and whatever, and the eyes went to to dark because everyone does that now because of T2.
Yes, that's.
But it's like that's the thing now. When robots die, their eyes go from red to nothing. And then there was one in Voyager, right? You're right. I remember that. And then there was a third one. Now Annie Wersching is playing the Borg Queen, but I don't think they're supposed to be the same person because all of her flesh was burned away by that acid, or not by the plasma or whatever in the movie. So I don't know. Whatever, it doesn't matter.
But
there could be more than one queen. Maybe there's a new queen takes over because it's like a beehive, right? So when one queen dies, then there's another one.
According to Wikipedia, whether or not these appearances represent the same queen is never confirmed. So
or denied. Okay,
right. But obviously it's like. She has some kind of knowledge of what's gone on with the others and is like, maybe I shouldn't be maybe I need to be a little stealthy about this time. So,
well, yeah, she's being more subtle. Yeah. Cause assimilation doesn't always work. It's like outright aggression doesn't work. So they're being more tactical, or she's being more tactical.
At first I'll apologize. I think I mentioned it last week that I was my only kind of like, I guess negative part of this season was like, why would she plot against them? Because she needs them as well to fix the future so she can get back to her collective and get back to the future. And then this week I was like, oh, she's scanning the airwaves. It's like, no, she doesn't need to go back anywhere. She can just restart the collective here. She doesn't care about screwing up time and all that. What does that matter to her? As long as she can have her collective.
All she wants is to not be alone, right? Just like Geordi. So it's like, I'm going to, that makes perfect sense. I'm going to make my own collective here and just start from Earth and assimilate the entire, whatever. But I mean, exactly. That's why wouldn't you, right? Because who cares about going back to the future? Back to the future.
And speaking of that, Leah Thompson actually got to be on screen. That was great.
Yeah. She didn't. What I should have explained, I think, last week to people, we were talking about how she did 2 episodes. A lot of times people do that. It's called directing a block of episodes. What they do is they basically do 2 at a time. So they go to a location and shoot both episodes from that location, and they knock them both out. But it gives the director more time to work on stuff because they go for like 2 or 3 weeks instead of like 1 week for one episode. But also, it's just that's why you end up having somebody directing 2 episodes in a row because they're shooting them both at the same time. So I should have probably explained that last week because people were maybe wondering about that. But yeah, it makes sense. If she was probably there, and there was another block starting, and so she just like jumped in. I was glad to see Sung back, and I was glad to see Issa Briones came back finally, which makes sense.
Yeah,
and, that whole subplot was great because we knew that somehow Sung would figure in this show, and him and Q like sort of bribing him. I don't understand Q's end game. It's like, I wanted to destroy the future, or I don't, or I don't know. I'm starting to think that he's just because we did get more clues about him. Like he's talking about time and how he's running out of it. So maybe he is dying. But then what is his point? Why is he doing all this? I wonder.
Well, is he stuck in 2024? Because we saw at the end of the previous episode, his little snap didn't work. And he seems to be manipulating things more. I mean, in the past he did manipulate things, but he tended to use his powers and force others to do the manipulation. He didn't necessarily interact directly. So is he unable to, does he have some kind of like, I don't know, cosmic debilitating disease that's preventing him from using his powers or something? I don't know.
You say he needs a blue pill, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
He's got some kind of dysfunction?
Yeah. Yes.
No, I think that if you have powers lasting more than 4 hours. No, I honestly think it's just he's dying maybe, and as you die as a Q, you lose your powers. They just disappear. And so this is his sort of final I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out whether it was like we were talking about before, whether he's giving this gift to Picard finally, or if it's his final fuck you to humanity, or what. He seems to be trying to? I guess my question is he trying to get Picard to act and start to? I mean, ultimately, what is? I'm still trying to figure out his end game. It's difficult to figure out, which I guess is good because the show is not.
Yeah.
So it's not telegraphing the entire season, which I appreciate. So good writing, everybody. Thank you. Good work.
Well, it's obviously all revolving around Picard's present day ancestor, but yeah, you're right. It's hard to figure out because Q seems to be a lot more angry and malicious than in previous appearances, where it was all like to teach a lesson and to, well, I like this guy despite my best efforts and I want to help push him along. And maybe that's what this is, but it just seems more directed
he's never
and malicious.
He's never come across as evil. Like you said, malicious. But I mean, he struck Picard. He slapped him. No,
right.
People slapping people. And he just seems a little bit angrier and seems a little bit more desperate, I guess. Maybe because he's running out of time. But I also think it's interesting that Picards must reuse names because there was another Renee later in the Picard line too, which is a
nephew,
boy apparently. Nephew, yeah. But yeah, I like the fact that it all comes down because the Picards are like pivotal in time, right? Because they do a lot of important things.
Yes.
So what is it that she does when she goes and gets on this flight? Because they kind of talk about it vaguely. It leads to more of this and that and whatever. But it's interesting to see, or I'm wondering how this impacts the future so much. But it's also kind of a callback to the Gary 7 Assignment Earth episode because he's trying to prevent that missile launch, a test of a missile, right?
Right, exactly.
Which launches the humans into World War III.
Yes.
But I mean, if you're saying like First Contact is canon, which I guess it is, then we do have another war, humanity, and then eventually we meet the Vulcans, and that's like, oh, we're not alone now.
Now we're cool.
Now we're cool. Yeah. Because of Mr. Cochrane, but so it's going to go like Picard says, change never happens when you want it to. So there's like hundreds of years of bullshit still on Earth. So how does Renee's flight, I wonder, make a difference?
Well, in I thought it was like almost a throwaway line where they said that she goes to Europa and discovers a life form that she thinks and advocates for being sentient. So it's like maybe that's the change. Her not going and not advocating for that life form is what causes whatever happens. And I'm like, I don't know how that fits in, but it just seemed interesting that they made a point of saying that. But it was almost like a throwaway line. And it's like, well, that seemed discovering a sentient life form on another planet in the 21st century seems significant. So,
well, that kind of, I mean, if that's true, if that's a turning point, then that, I don't know, does that negate First Contact?
Maybe.
I mean, I don't know.
Because
because maybe the race is not, or this alien, whatever, is not sentient, or I don't know. Maybe the point is that she's not supposed to go, and instead, maybe what they end up having to do is prevent her from going.
Right.
Because it's not the right time, not the right time for for First Contact. First Contact comes later with the Vulcans, right? So maybe it's the idea is they're doing the wrong thing because because no one said her mission has to happen. No one said that. This is the point, you have to make sure this does happen. So maybe the point is that they're supposed to stop it, and maybe that'll be the twist.
That's true. Also, thinking about it really quick. So yeah, maybe we discover sentient life too soon, and humanity's like, no, we have to kill it, and that's what leads to the rise of the Confederation. Instead of
not ready for it,
right? Instead of meeting the Vulcans after a period of self-destruction and meeting the Vulcans and going, you know what, they're actually, other life forms are kind of cool. And we're actually to the point now where we can be more accepting of that. Or we phaser them and create the mirror universe.
Right. Well, even Picard says it's like it changes humanity in a profound way. We are no longer alone in the universe. I mean, he says that basically.
Right.
And when he's explaining what First Contact meant. So I think it's going to turn out that, I mean, it's just a theory, obviously, but I think it's going to turn out that their job is to prevent Renee. In fact, if we're talking about time travel episodes, maybe Picard's got to let Renee die. I mean, I don't know if we're flashing back to Edith Keeler and shit.
Yes.
Sitting on the edge of forever. I mean,
exactly. I'm kind of liking your theory because they've made a point with them, and some people are like, oh, they're going too far with this, but they've made a point of showing that Earth 2024 is not very, still not accepting of things that are different, like with the, sanctuary cities and the cages and all that stuff. So why make a point of that if you're not going to be like, hey, first contact can't happen now. So
we're not ready for it. Like, I mean, Picard's even said change doesn't happen when you expect it to. The point is that if we're thinking about the history of Star Trek, then first contact happens later, after all the wars, after all the bullshit, when Cochrane takes his ship out and the Vulcans show up. I mean, the Vulcans are probably watching right now.
Sure, yeah.
But even Laris is, I'm just going to call her Laris in quotes for now.
Yes.
But she's not like, okay, we need to do this. She doesn't really know why she's supposed to watch Renee either, right?
Right.
She's just supposed to keep Renee safe so Renee can not go to space. I mean, I don't know. So maybe if taken in that context, Q is actually doing the right thing because he's trying to prevent her from going.
Maybe that's what it is. And because his lack of powers, the first time through, he wasn't able to prevent that, and she went. And,
maybe.
That would be a nice little twist. I would like that.
I can't imagine that they're going to change Q that fundamentally to make him like evil, to malevolent. So I think it's just he's an asshole in some ways, but he's trying to help, I think, in his own way. So he's trying to help Picard see what's important and to whatever. But the idea is that Renee can't go on her mission because that will, show humanity that we're not alone, but it won't make any difference. And then when first contact happens, people were like, nah, who cares?
Right, exactly.
So anyway, that's my theory anyway.
No, I like it. I think that I would like to see it proceed in that way. I
just had to beat your insight from last week. That's all.
No, I think you're going to be right, and it would be really cool if they go in that direction. I will also say, obviously, family members of the Soongs obviously have a profound effect on the family line because centuries later, Soong makes an android based on the present day Soong's daughter, or at least looks like her. So I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting.
Right.
So
well, yeah, that actually makes perfect sense because they weren't able. I think it's going to turn out he's not able to save her.
Yeah.
Although maybe, but that'll affect him later on. But there'll be something that ties that together. I think because of artificial intelligence is another thing that's going to be important because that's a topical thing for today. What is AI and what is sentience and all that stuff. So, but what happens? Let's think about it for a minute. What happens in Star Trek? We haven't gotten to the eugenics wars yet with Khan, right? So that hasn't happened.
That already happened.
It did?
Yeah, according to Star Trek lore, the eugenics Khan left Earth in 1999.
Okay, well that couldn't have happened. That can't be right then, obviously.
So they're actually Greg Cox. Shout out to novelist Greg Cox, who's awesome and a great writer. He did a novel trilogy basically on the whole Khan and eugenics war. It's been a long time since I've read them because they came out quite a long time ago. But if I remember correctly, he had a clever way of going, yeah, it actually did happen, but it wasn't like this huge thing. It was cleverly done so that, yeah, it still happened in the late 90s.
But nobody knew about it.
Yeah, and it was like, there were still like these wars and stuff like that, but there were, other things were going on that took attention away from them, and, things were, buried and not talked about and stuff like that. So,
well, the internet didn't exist, so it wasn't
right.
It wasn't on Twitter.
So
that's interesting. Well, that's interesting. Okay, well then, great. But yeah, I mean, as you know, that's probably because 1999 seemed like so far away from 1966.
Yeah.
It's also why on my poster for Soylent Green it says it's the year 2022.
Exactly.
And Soylent Green is not a thing. We don't have dump trucks coming to pick people up. Not yet, anyway.
There is a product, a drink called Soylent out there.
Or Blade Runner. Blade Runner takes place in Los Angeles, 2019 So
we do not have spinners, and I'm disappointed by that.
So. Well, and Los Angeles doesn't look like LA. Doesn't look like that yet.
Yeah, exactly.
So back in the day, 30 years in the future seemed like pretty far. So, but obviously not. But I would say that for the purposes of this show, I think they're sort of they're retconning the dates a bit because I doubt they're trying to make the case that the eugenics wars already happened with Khan. I think that Khan's going to be in the future from where Picard is now on Earth. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening, right? Because they have that, and they have the war, between the factions and whatever, the alliance, etc., blah blah blah, and they have all their fights, and then it gets,
Well, they have a convenient because, like you said, there's still a World War III that happens despite what people say. They address that in the first episode of Picard, or Star Trek: The Next Generation, with Q putting, in the mid 21st century there was a horrific war. And they talk about, of course, in First Contact. So right there, you can say, well, sure, we're supposed to think that eugenics war happened in 1999, but wars kind of, especially one that decimating, screw up historical records and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So it may have actually happened in
2099
or 2029 or something like that instead.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Even Spock says that back in the day. He's like, yeah, the records are spotty back then.
Yeah.
So it's like, we don't really know. 1999 could have been 2099 or whatever. It doesn't make any difference because, all records were destroyed in a big war. And, so there's all that kind of stuff coming up. And I'm just saying, if they're going to stick with Star Trek canon and sort of established timelines in a way, I mean, I guess you could make the case that this is a different timeline since they actually went back in time.
True.
So all bets are off. Whatever the future might be, it's a different future, and so who knows? But maybe Khan will just show up now.
They have Benedict Cumberbatch for.
He's just gonna drop in.
He'll show it. He'll be in the background somewhere,
just walking around. Yeah. So, but anyway, I love what they're doing with the show. I think it's cool, and I love Patrick Stewart, of course, as I've said many times. I think everyone is probably really. I don't know. There's not a bad actor in the show. I think they're all doing a great job. And they even managed to get Elnor back for a second, which I thought was nice. But
that was like whoa. And then
well, he was in the opening credits. I'm like, oh, they're going to bring him back somehow. And Issa Baronis was in the opening credits. I'm sorry, I watched that stuff. I'm like, oh, well, who's going to be on this episode? Because they don't really, they don't keep it a secret. But
this season on Picard, I've not done that because I'm like, I don't want to know who shows up where. So. I've kind of averted my eyes during the opening credits. So,
but everyone,
I mean, we all know their main characters this year. So
this season, you know that John Delancey was coming back. Obviously,
right?
You know that Brent Spiner was coming back. So it's not. I love the fact they keep finding ways to bring Brent Spiner back. I think that's cool. But
I think it's there were stories like early on that he wanted to distance himself from Star Trek, and he's been and I've heard stories about he's kind of a grumpy person and stuff like that, but he obviously seems to love Star Trek, loves playing
getting
these characters
too, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, but everyone just seems like they're having a really good time and enjoying this.
I've heard that same thing about him, and I don't know if it's true, but I've heard that he's kind of I don't know what the word is, like a perfectionist almost, like a stickler, like a really classically trained actor. He's kind of like he took himself more seriously. I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not, but the fact they obviously don't have a problem with him because they hired him again, and Patrick Stewart obviously doesn't have a problem with him, so he keeps coming back. So
I think what I appreciate about him though is when they did Star Trek Nemesis, he was like, he basically went to producers and the writers and stuff, and he's like, Data has to die in this, and they're like, well, wait, why? And he's like, this is supposed to be an android that looks the same, and I'm not looking the same, so we can't continue this. And I think that was part of the discussion with him coming back for the first season of Picard. He's like, that's going to have to be like a one-off thing. We can't bring the character back and he continues, because it just wouldn't be realistic and feasible. So
you could do it. You could absolutely do it now.
Yeah.
I mean, they could de-age him, but it's like, why? Why would you want to do that? The way they're doing it now actually makes more sense.
Yeah.
And I think having Data die nobly was a good idea, because why not?
Exactly.
Why not? So they're always, and the other thing is, he's an android. There was already lore, and you could have a third one. If you really wanted to. There was already what would the third one be called?
There was a third one before.
Oh shit, you're right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. So
oh man, what would the fourth one be called? I'm just trying to stick with the same, like Data, lore. What was the other one called? Meme.
This
is my android meme. And he's constantly looking over his shoulder at something else. Oh, okay. Anyway.
Yes.
Wow, that was a deep cut. Sorry, everybody.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, but you got it. That was the.
And he always had. Well, he likes cats, so
he loves cats.
That fits.
It actually does. It actually does fit. He just always has a cat. LOL.
And he's eating a cheeseburger and not giving it to the cat.
That's
anyway,
right.
we're getting too far.
That's right. That's but there was a hole in it. We're in it now. But yeah, I love what they're doing with Picard. And the thing that I like almost the most about this season is I don't know exactly where it's going, and I appreciate that because, as you and I know, we've watched so many things and kind of understand how the sausage is made. Not to be too gross about it. Is that a lot of times I can figure out what's going to happen. It's like, oh, this is going to happen, or this is going to happen, because you have this limited palette. You can't just bring people in at the end and go, oh, by the way, this is the bad guy the whole time. Somebody you've never seen before. It's like that doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Well, so
you can, but those are badly written shows.
You can. You absolutely can do anything you want. I'm sorry. If it's your show, you can do whatever you want. But I like the fact that I'm still thinking about it and trying to figure it out, which is cool because it doesn't always happen. And I appreciate good writing and I appreciate good performances. And obviously the show technically is very, very well done.
Yes.
And it's fun. And you know what? It's fun. And there's some comedy. Thank goodness it's not all serious. And even the Girardi Borg Queen thing, they still have a little bit of banter, which I appreciate. And the whole thing is just, it's serious, but not like super serious.
And I'm still going to say, even if you're, a franchise that is steeped in time travel type stories, if you're going to do one that spans a whole season, possibly more than one season, we'll see. Terry Matalas is the guy you want to bring in. I don't know if anyone listening to this has watched the series 12 Monkeys, but it was just wonderfully written and handled time travel in a familiar but unique way that I think his talents for that and his uncanny ability to figure out strange ways and interesting ways to manipulate time within a story are shining through here. So I appreciate that he's the showrunner this season and next season. I think it's just fantastic. So
yeah, I think if you ask Terry Matalas though what some of his influences are, I'm sure he would mention the original Star Trek.
Oh yeah,
Star
absolutely.
Trek in general. It's like because he's obviously a sci-fi fan. But yeah, I enjoyed that show way more than I thought I was going to. And you're right, there were a lot of clever time travel things. Because I mean, if you've seen the movie, the premise is Bruce Willis goes back in time, right?
Yes.
Basically to sort of prevent this plague thing, which it's a really clever movie. If you've never seen 12 Monkeys, it's really clever.
Yes.
It's really well done. Terry Gilliam is a genius.
Yes.
Madeline Stowe is great in it. Bruce Willis is great in it. Everyone's really great in it. But
Brad Pitt, he's fantastic in it. So.
That's right, Brad Pitt. Yeah, that's right. And then I try to remember. Oh God, the actor who ended up being the well, it doesn't matter. I don't want to spoil it. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really well done movie, and the series I enjoyed very much too. But yeah, that's definitely a good model. But Terry Matalas definitely has a handle on that kind of thing. So I'm sure that was part of it. But I'm really liking it. So I can't really think of anything. You and I both are the same in some ways. It's like we watch a show and we're like, well, this thing is bothering me or that thing is bothering me. And I can't really think of anything that's bothering me on Picard, really.
No, like I said, the only thing that was really bugging me was like, why is the Borg Queen trying to work against them? Because they need to go back to the future.
But it makes sense now.
But I'm like,
now that you say that, it makes sense.
Yeah. She's like, screw that. My goal is to get a Borg collective again. I don't care when. So.
Right.
Like,
yeah, she doesn't care. Screw the timeline and screw your humans trying to fix your own timeline. Fuck that. I don't care.
Exactly.
My job is assimilation. That's my job.
Right. Exactly.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do my job.
That's right.
But yeah, I guess the only thing that was bothering me before hello. The only thing that was bothering me before is English, apparently speaking properly. But no, Rios was kind of bothering me. Not the actor, but just his storyline was a little bit, I don't know. And I hate to say contrived because that, like you pointed out, that's, what are you going to discuss if you go back in time? Of course, you're going to make it topical for current events. I just felt like I'd seen that before a little bit, and they kind of mercifully got out of it as quick as possible. And like one episode of that was enough. Obviously, it's still a problem, and I'm not trying to downplay the issues, but it's just that's not. The idea is to move the story forward, so they had to rescue him in an amusing way, and they had to, and now they're all back together, taking a body out of the ship.
Well, I think there's a point to it, though. Funny. Now that
there is,
like
we
were talking about, it's like it wasn't just like, hey, listen, we're Star Trek, and we're going to cover something that's topical and be political for no reason. I think, like we've been talking about, that's going to play into this life form that will eventually be discovered on Europa. So
maybe.
Yeah.
Well, if it is discovered,
right.
If it's so maybe it shouldn't be. So
yeah.
Anyway, well, we talked about Picard quite a bit.
Yes,
I feel
we did.
Like we should probably we should probably move on to Moon Knight, which is, we're like, oh, we'll talk about Picard for a minute, but then it turned out to be like 40 minutes.
I know. I was like, oh, Moon Knight will be the bigger discussion. And it's
Moonlight will take no.
Moonlight.
That's a different show.
It's
also a Bruce
Moonlighting.
Moon Knight.
Man.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I knew Oscar Isaac was a great actor before, but the physical aspects of his performance in this episode were amazing. I mean, not everybody can do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he's terrific. And Ethan Hawke is terrific. Everybody's really good in this. And it's just, I don't know. I mean, Moon Knight, let's face it, has a sort of, I'm going to say, complicated comic history.
That's putting it mildly, yeah.
Yeah, the character's been retconned several times and redone several times. It's kind of a mess, let's be honest.
Yes.
So the idea that they were going to do a Moon Knight show in the first place, I'm like, okay, I'll watch it because why not? And then I heard Oscar Isaac, and I'm like, oh, this could be really good. And so it's very non-Marvel in my opinion. It's very different than a lot of Marvel stuff, and I think it's a direction they're going into, more into the horror aspects or more into the I mean, there's blood. I mean, he's got blood on his hands.
Yeah,
that's the most blood I've ever seen in a Marvel show. That's a lot.
Exactly.
So what did you stick his hand inside somebody to? I don't know. So it's like, it's pretty gross. I'm surprised he didn't have the still beating heart in his hand.
Right.
Like what's his face from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. But it was, I love the show. I don't know. I hope it continues like this, and it's just super cool. So anyway,
I would say so. I remember I didn't read any of the solo title issues of Werewolf by Night and stuff like that Moon Knight was in, because that's where he started off in a series called Werewolf by Night. But I remember very distinctly when Moon Knight issue #1 came out, I was like, oh, this looks like an interesting character, and I've loved the character since then. And you're right, he has been retconned, and it's like, well, no, it's really this, and over the years, and there's been especially in the last, I don't know, 5 or 10 years, there's been decidedly different takes on the character in the comics. But I've still always loved the character, and when I heard they were doing a series, I'll be honest, I wasn't immediately because I'm like, so if they do Moon Knight with what is, essentially the Marvel film formula, for, if you will, I'm like, I'm sure it'll be good because they know what they're doing, but it just seems like it would be different and maybe not a take I'm interested in. But I like the fact that they're like, yo, no, we're going to completely dive into lots of, interesting aspects of the character, and we're going to embrace the dissociative identity disorder, which I like how they did that in the first episode. That was really cool. Just not only does he have himself, chained to his bed at night with sand around it to see, and his door taped shut just to see if he's snuck out, which I'm like, obviously your other identity is smart enough to cover that up, except for the goldfish. He screwed up there. But the fact that, while we get to see a fight and a chase from the perspective of someone who doesn't actually get to participate in all the exciting parts of it, which I thought was interesting. It was like these little blackout moments, and it was like these quick flashes, and he's like you said, he's standing there with all these bodies around him and having to run, and then the whole car chase scene was like, wow, that was just. It was different, and like you said,
I love the fact that 1 second he was going backwards.
Now. Yeah.
I'm like, what?
Yeah. So, cool. And you have the voice. Well, it'll be the God Khonshu, spoilers, but you have this voice booming to him, but he's not asleep.
Surrender the body.
Yeah, and being sarcastic and stuff to him.
F. Murray Abraham.
Yeah.
I love it.
And then he, sees his reflection acting differently, and he has a conversation. By the end of it, it's like, I don't know. It was just cleverly done. Oscar Isaac is, I think he's a really terrific actor, and I'll watch anything he's in.
Great. He's amazing in this, and it can't be easy to play that kind of thing. You're playing 2 different characters, you're playing a third kind of weird character, and it's like, is it taking place in your mind? You got these different things, things are changing, and my brain always goes to, well, this is also makes things easier to shoot, from a production standpoint. You have to shoot all that stuff. It's like he wakes up and it's already done, so that's convenient. Right. But I just think he's just excellent, and it's a clever script, and it's a clever performance.
And he's
there's some fun stuff. It's fun. It's good.
basically his
Good show.
best friend is a human statue, which was great.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is it's always people that don't really talk back. Like people he talks to are like not responding to him at all. Like
Yes.
his mom on the phone. I don't really think that's his mom on the phone, frankly.
Yeah,
But I don't think there's anybody there. There's nobody there. Sorry, I missed you. Later, Gators, or whatever he says. I don't want to do the accent because I'm terrible at it. But
Well, and Oscar Isaac pointed out that the accent they developed for Stephen Grant was purposely meant to be
Fake,
that's kind of fake. So, but he pulls it off well. It was great. It was just
well, that's funny if you think about it, because it's supposed to be he's trying to blend in as that's his like a different undercover identity or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
So it can't be perfect. So it's Oscar doing an impersonation of a person doing a British accent.
Yeah,
which I think
exactly.
is brilliant, and he definitely does a great job. I think that. I'm a little disappointed that Marvel didn't lock him in for more seasons, because apparently he only signed on for one season.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see, just based on this first episode, I'd like to see more of this. Hopefully it will continue. Well, you know what though? I'll also say that if it's just 6 episodes and they're all really good, then that's great. But I'd like to try to keep Oscar Isaac in the MCU somehow to do more stuff. But I don't think Moon Knight's going to join the Avengers or anything like that. So
Yeah,
I'm not worried about that.
I know they always say, "Oh, these are limited series" and all that kind of stuff, but based on, even just from the get-go with Sam Jackson, I would, and I can call him Sam because we're friends, but
Yeah, we got your buddies.
yeah, I would be. I don't think we know the particulars of whatever contract or what they signed him up for. I'm sure they're like, there's some kind of clause, or maybe they're like, yeah, let's sign for multiple seasons. Let's intend to do one, but if we come up with a good story idea, let's continue this. And I would guess, just based on like interviews I've seen him talking about this show, that he'd be like, yeah, I'm up for more if it's done right. Maybe he's a little burned from Star Wars, but
maybe. But he purposely said, I don't want a multi-year contract.
Right. Yeah.
The golden handcuffs. He didn't want that.
Right.
So he's signed on for one with, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure if they all want to do it and it's worthwhile, and they,
that could just
everything works
be,
out contractually, I'm sure he'll do another.
That could just be like, oh yeah, I'd really like this character, but I'm going to sign up for one. So if you want me for more, then you're going to have to pay.
I just, I don't know. Maybe that's it too. But I think you're right. Maybe he was a little bit burned out by being in Star Wars, but also it's like he's an actor who does, he likes to have diversity in his career. He doesn't want to be locked into something. So I can understand that he doesn't have to do Marvel movies. He doesn't have to do anything. He's one of those people where he will be in demand for all kinds of different roles. He's already got to do Dune Part 2, right, which is starting, and that's going to be another year and a half out of his life or whatever.
Is he in that one though? Is there going to be Leto?
I don't know.
In the story?
Sure, why not? Sure, maybe
they bring him back. No,
that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe he doesn't have. We don't know necessarily what happens in Part 2. There could be scenes that take place before.
Yeah, maybe he already shot some scenes. Who knows? But
that's true. That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah. So I guess he doesn't necessarily show up in that for too many. He could work a couple weeks on it or whatever. But yeah, we'll get into Moon Knight more. But it's just I wanted to say that I'm really enjoying where it's going so far. It's very clever. I like Ethan Hawke. He's doing a great job. I saw an interview with Ethan Hawke. He's like, yeah, man, I dig sci-fi. Oscar Isaac approached me at a coffee shop and said, hey, man, you want to do this show? And he's like, sure. And then he didn't even read the script. He's like, it sounds great. Okay, I'll do it. And so
I love the fact that Oscar Isaac went to him and said, hey, it'd be great if you could be in the show. And Ethan Hawke's like, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah, why not?
He's another one that could have easily gone down the path of being typecast and doing the same kind of roles. And he's kind of steadfastly refused to do that and just does. He's a very interesting actor, and I like. He's another one that's like, if he's in a project, it's probably worth checking out, if only for his performance, because he's really good, and I like the things he chooses to do. Yeah,
I knew him way back when during Gattaca time, actually.
Right.
But that's when I work with him. But he was cool. He's a cool guy back then, and not super egotistical or anything, which could happen because he was about to blow up about that time, or he had already blown up. But So yeah, he's like Kurt Russell. It's like they choose interesting things. I think Ethan Hawke chooses interesting movies to make, and he's interested in directing. And I think he wanted to work with Oscar Isaac. I think he likes Oscar Isaac's performances, and they wanted to work together, and it all worked out. I mean, it's 6 episodes. It took what, 3 or 4 months, maybe at the most, to do.
Yeah.
I mean, you sure you had to go to Budapest because that's where they filmed it, which is funny.
And they probably remembered it very differently.
They probably remembered it very differently, yeah. So it's funny to see that they're trying to make it look like England, but it's like it's not England at all. But it looks pretty good for England.
Yeah,
it just takes one double-decker bus to sell it, I guess, and that's all you got to do.
That's right.
But yeah, I enjoy the show a lot, and I think that if Marvel Phase 4 is like what did I see the quotes, like Marvel's "we don't give a fuck" phase, which is kind of true. It's like we're going to do whatever we want now because we've given you the Avengers, we've given you this whole 10-year arc of these superhero quote unquote. Now we're going to mix shit up. We're going to have Blade. We're going to have supernatural shit. We're going to have Moon Knight. We're going to have Secret Invasion with the Skrulls and all that other stuff. So that's cool. I'm totally down. And I'm looking forward to all of it because it's still fun. And if they keep having this kind of stuff, then I mean it's like Loki too. Loki was kind of a weird show, right? And that was not like, and WandaVision was kind of out of the norm with all of its kind of TV reference and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a great. I'm liking Marvel Phase 4. I think it's. I
agree, and I do like too that like one of the main directors for Moon Knight is Egyptian. And they're using writers and directors on this that have that kind of background. So they at least, and I'm sure they did their research in all this writing, but they at least have kind of a check for someone to go, that's pretty offensive. You should maybe not do that. So hopefully we're going to avoid any kind of those things and actually make it, authentic and real as opposed to what a bunch of white guys think. Egyptian.
I'm sure they'll dive into the Egyptian mythology more, but I mean, basically, the whole show is sort of a sort of, I don't know what's the word, like a triest or sort of an exploration of mental illness. I guess, in a way.
Yes.
Just like because he's got something affective disorder or something like that.
Dissociative identity disorder.
Dissociative identity. Yeah, that's one. That's it. So could all of this be in his mind? Sure, absolutely. So maybe at the end he'll just be in a mental institution. He's like in a padded cell.
Well, it's funny you say that because there was a series, Moon Knight, where did exactly that. It was Stephen Grant. He was in an insane asylum, and they were like, now all the Moon Knight stuff that was all in your head, and there's little things where he acts out, or they even had scenes in that comic run where he blacked out and then stuff happened around him and it was like, you beat up this orderly. But in his head, he saw it as he was, on a mission for Khonshu and stuff. So,
well, if you're hearing voices in your head, that could mean you're insane. Who knows? But
or
have a problem.
I still, but the fish, he had one fin and now he has 2. I don't think it's the same fish, obviously. I do like him. People getting annoyed at him with conversations. It's like the woman in the pet store. She's like, "I said the same thing to you yesterday," and he's like, "I wasn't in here yesterday." And then his missed date because he lost 2 days and didn't realize it.
He missed his date. Yeah, she was into him.
I know, poor guy.
I mean, his manager's like, "Yeah, you're a real catch," because he's not really a catch at all.
No. So who set up the date? Was it Mark Spector that set up the date?
Well, it was Mark, obviously. I also love the fact that Mark has got a flip phone because Mark is so he's so cutting edge. He's on a freaking Motorola flip phone. I had that exact phone. That was a really super cool phone. But
yes. Nice.
I think it's probably around here somewhere, but I'm in. I want to see where it goes. So I'm looking for it. And we got to wait. We got to wait a week for episodes. So that's kind of a bummer. But,
yes.
I don't mind. I used to piss and moan about not being able to binge, but now I'm kind of gone through that. I'm on the other side of that now, where I kind of don't mind waiting because the anticipation is fun.
Yeah, especially now that we have only like 6 to 10 episodes, depending on the show. I'm like, we'll feed that out a little bit. I think this will definitely be one that'll be it's worth the wait. And then when the whole thing's complete, going back and watching it again, because I think there's a lot of stuff in there that's going to be worth pointing out and seeing again. So
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm sure there's a lot of things that I'm missing because I'm not a Moon Knight expert by any means. But yeah, it's cool. I'm really enjoying it. It's funny you say like there was a whole thing about him being in a mental institution because I always remember the book Catcher in the Rye, which is one of my favorite books, where it turns out, spoilers if you haven't read Catcher in the Rye, it turns out that Holden's in a mental institution at the end. Shocking.
Yes.
Imagining his life, but I mean I'm simplifying it obviously, but it's just so it's not exactly a new trope, but it's interesting that might be the way they end it. Who knows? Or maybe they'll be, this is all in your head, but then there'll be that one thing where, he's got the scare beetle in his pocket. He's like, ah,
Yeah. Wow.
And that'll be the end. That'll be how they end the show. But
yes.
And so, or Khonshu will just show up and say, okay, are you ready to go? I love F. Murray Abraham, man. That guy's awesome. But
and I like they're making Khonshu kind of snarky, which
kind
is
of a
great.
dick.
Yeah.
Kind of a dick.
Well, and he is.
Surrender the blood. Yeah. It's like, the moron's in charge again.
Yeah. It's like,
I love that.
Give it back so that we can get out of this and he can get out of this
Idiot's
alive.
in charge.
Yeah.
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 Well, I suppose if you were going to have some sort of mental disorder, the sarcastic voice in your head is probably better than the other kinds.
Yes.
So that's what you want. You want a sarcastic voice in your head. So,
yeah.
But I mean, how far are they going to take that? Will it be that all of it is in his mind? Because I'm still kind of interested in how he escapes from the restraints, and I suppose they could put the tape back on the door and all that stuff.
Oh,
But
yeah.
why is he trying to maintain the illusion for Steven? Right. Why is Mark bothering to do that? So to keep Steven fragile. And who's the most who is he? Is he Steven or is he Mark or is he somebody else? Or
yes.
So I guess we'll find out. So yes, exactly. So yeah, it's a great show. And I'm looking forward to it. So we should go to picks now probably because we kind of killed a lot of time with Picard. I don't mean killed, but we now the show's almost over. So
a lot of time. I like you brought it back to time travel there. Well done.
I did bring it back to time travel because I'm a time travel aficionado.
Yes.
So.
Well, so I'm going to have a pretty easy pick, an obvious pick for this one. I'm going to pick
Morpheus.
No. Yes. I'm going to pick the Moon Knight comic book series. Specifically the volume 1, the first run, just because that is the one that's more memorable to me. There has been like 9 different Moon Knight series over the years. He even was in, if you want to tie this into the MCU, he was even part of the West Coast Avengers for a little while. So,
yeah.
But I like the original series by Doug Moench, and I'm probably mispronouncing his name. And Bill Sienkiewicz, who is a fantastic comic book artist, and he started out as the artist and penciler for the original Moon Knight series, but it was a lot of fun. Again, much like the TV series, the comic book series was like, oh, this is something a little different. I mean, Marvel has always kind of like tied their gods or mythological gods into superheroes. Thor, they made the Asgards, these superhuman beings. Kind of did that with Hercules and some other things, but this is kind of the first time that the god wasn't Khonshu wasn't necessarily the hero or the central part of the story, and in fact at times he was almost kind of antagonist, and you had this character that had different disguises as it appeared at first, but wound up being different personalities. So it was just, it was something different in comics, and it was a lot of fun. And I had previously liked the writer and artist, so it was like kind of a no-brainer. It's like, oh, let's see what this new thing is. And cool. Also, much like this show, it didn't really tie in or cross over, at least initially, with the greater Marvel universe. So it was like, wow, this is kind of fun. So anyway, that's my pick. Moon Knight Volume 1. I went for 38 issues, I believe, so it's worth checking out if you haven't. Start there, and I think you'll progress through the other volumes of Moon Knight pretty quickly afterwards. So,
or just watch the TV show.
Oh, well, yeah, fine.
You don't have to go back to the source material. No, I'm kidding.
Would you like to know more?
So. Would you like to know more? Yeah, I mean, you're going to find that this is a conglomeration, I'm sure, but I don't think they're not being.
No. Yeah, absolutely.
Because Harrow is not exactly a big villain in Moon Knight comics.
Well, Stephen Grant initially was a millionaire. He was very rich, and Mark
all
Spector
changed.
was a cabbie, and and a mercenary. So yeah, it all kind of
A
changed.
cabbie and a mercenary.
Actually, no, I think there was another personality, Lockley, that was the cabbie, and Mark Spector was a mercenary and all this kind of So
How many people are in there? Well, even Harrow points out, and Ethan Hawke's character is like mercenary because he knows,
Yep.
he knows him. So
Yep.
anyway,
So-
but I'm sure we'll get more to that, and we're going to talk about Moon Knight probably.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Anyway, my pick this week is a TV show. It debuted on HBO Max recently. I don't know if you know this about me, Joe, but I do enjoy food.
Do
And
you? Oh, okay.
Yes, and at one point I was married to somebody who went to a really good cooking school and was a good chef. I'm not saying that my wife now doesn't cook, but I just know a lot about this sort of world.
Yes.
And I'm also a fan of the traditional French cuisine. Anyway, my pick is a show called Julia, which is on HBO Max about Julia Child, which I didn't think I was gonna. I was like, I like Julia. I thought Julia Child was an interesting character. Sort of ahead of her time. I mean, a woman doing a cooking show, which basically there's so many cooking shows in the world now, but it's all because of her in a way, because she started it on public access. But it's like, it's just one of those things where I was like, I'm going to take a chance because I like David Hyde Pierce, who's in the show, and Bebe Neuwirth is in the show. Isabella Rossellini's in the show, and Sarah Lancashire, who plays Julia Child. I thought for a minute it was somebody else, like in makeup,
Right.
but she really, really looks a lot like Julia Child. So anyway, the point is that the show is really good. It's funny and it's topical and it's amazing in a way that this woman was able to do this. I mean, she was like in her 50s when the show started, and she's like, her life is kind of not exactly what she thought it would be, but she knew how to cook,
Right.
So she was really good at that. And she's just sort of like, you know what? I think that people would enjoy this. It has to be something that women can make at home. And I want to make French cuisine accessible to everybody. And people are like, "Wow, that's weird," but they didn't believe in it, and then they did, and now it was a huge thing. So anyway, it's a good show. It's really well done, and not the usual thing that I would watch necessarily, but I gave it a chance and I was happy. So that's my pick.
I want to check that out because I remember as a kid becoming aware around the same time of Julia Child and Bob Ross, and they're both two people that their joy was teaching people how to do in kind of not simple terms, but in easy terms, the thing that they love. And they both, in their own right, became, kind of pop culture characters, even though they were just being them. So that's, that's kind of, I don't know why that just occurred to me, but I'm like, yeah, I kind of equate the two of them because they were both on public access and they were not, flashy and huge, but just their personalities and who they were became characters and not things that people have made fun of. Well, maybe some idiots have, but things that people have kind of lovingly expanded upon over the years. So that's I'll need to check.
Well, I just
that out.
remember actually my first experience with Julia Child was Saturday Night Live. Dan Aykroyd's
Right. Yes.
of her sketch, of her cutting off her finger and blood everywhere.
Yeah.
Save the liver. I was like, wow, who's Julia Child? 'Cause that's pretty funny. So if it was worth parodying, making fun of her, or what I'm saying in
Yes.
Saturday Night Live. I mean, obviously. So I sort of, I don't know. I started watching the show. I found it super interesting, and I don't really cook much, but I still like the idea that people could watch her and get this stuff, and it would turn out. And the conflict with her in the first episode with her and Isabella Rossellini's character, they're trying to write this cookbook together, and Isabella Rossellini is this like French. It's like, oh, it's I have to put in whatever. It's like I need it to be accurate, so that people can do this at home. She's like, oh, you have to do the it's like a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And don't follow the recipe. It's really funny. And they have she and her husband David Hyde Pierce have really good banter. I mean, he's great, and Bebe Neuwirth is fantastic, of course. It's just a really fun show, and I enjoyed it a lot more than I had no expectations at all, which is a kind of a good way to get into something, and
Yes.
I was pleasantly surprised. So I'm going to keep watching it. Anyway, so find the Flickcast at Spotify, at Apple Podcasts, at all the other places you find podcasts. Joe and I are on the socials at What Joe Writes, and I am at Chris Yu, and also Ulrich Picks on Instagram. And you can find the Flickcast at TheFlickcast on Twitter and everywhere else. Also at link, so it's linktr.ee/TheFlickcast. So linktree/TheFlickcast. You can find all the other links there. And you can give us a rating or review. That would be great. Positive reviews always better, but honesty is fine too.
That's
if you
true.
hate the show, it's worthwhile to know why. And if you also support the show, you can drop us a couple of dollars on Patreon, such as patreon.com/TheFlickcast, and all the other things, the spiel. I think what I'm going to do is record it just once and just like tack it on to every episode.
That's probably a good idea.
Way I don't have to. That way I don't have to say it every time I try to remember. Clearly, if you're listening to the show right now, you know where to find it. And
Sure.
have me having to say where to find it is sort of redundant, but who am I trying to reach, right? Who's the new audience? Like, if you found the show, you already found the show. So there you
You
go.
should
Thank
go tell 2 friends, and they'll tell 2 friends, and so on and so
Right,
on.
exactly. And, I know we've been talking a lot about Star Trek lately, but Star Trek's a big deal. It's a part of sci-fi history, and it's a part of nerd history. Nerds love
Yes.
sci-fi and Star Trek. And Star Trek has infiltrated the world quite a bit, so it's hard not to talk about it. But we'll get on to other things, too. Moon Knight's a different thing. But we'll definitely explore lots of different stuff. It's just that's what we're onto right now. So.
We'll do some more deep dives soon, too, when you least expect it, on somebody cool or a topic that's really cool. So
Yeah, somebody cool. I don't know who, but somebody cool.
there's probably some cool people in Hollywood, I'm sure. So
There might be, yeah, and apparently some not so cool people.
Yeah.
But anyway, all right, cool. So that's been it. Anything else, Joe? We good?
I think we're good.
All right. So for Joe Dilworth, I'm Chris Ulrich. That was the Flickcast. Thanks so much for listening.